In study after study, money is often cited as one of the top conflict points in a marriage. Finances can be an emotional topic for couples, especially when money is tight. So it pays to get in the habit of discussing it on a regular basis, even if you keep separate finances. At stcumoney.org, find 6 tips for making the conversation easier.
Spokane listens when business talks. Welcome to Business Talks, the region's only local business radio talk show with your host, Ryan McNeese. Business Talks is brought to you by STCU. Now, let's get down to business with Business Talks.
Welcome to the program. I'm Ryan McNeese with Business Talks, and we're fortunate today to have Linn Parish, editor of the Business Journal, with us at the table today. Thank you for joining us, Linn.
Thank you, Ryan. Glad to be here.
Well, let's jump right in. I'm always fascinated. Your position as editor of the Business Journal has a wide distribution in our region. How does one in the journalistic world get to that position? Give us a little bit about your backstory.
Sure. A quick point of clarification. I am the deputy editor at the Journal. So number 2, I have a boss who is the editor.
I was rounding up.
Yeah.
Rounding up just a little bit.
Kim Crompton's his name. And, I started out in journalism in the mid-'90s as a reporter for a small weekly, moved up to a daily newspaper, and then got a job at the Journal as a reporter. Worked there for a while, and got offered a job as an editor at a startup magazine, which was fascinating and a valuable learning experience. And then the Journal has really an incredible stability in its editor ranks, and there hadn't been an editor opening there for 20 years or so. So when one came up, they came to me, and I couldn't say no.
That'd be hard to say no to, because the Journal does have such a respectable position in our region for business. Let's jump in a little bit. What are you seeing that's trending right now? What's going on in our community, both Spokane region, North Idaho? What are you seeing right now?
One thing that we reported recently that I thought was very interesting was talking about median household income. And the most recent numbers, there's a little bit of lag in the data, as there often is. And the most recent numbers show a decrease countywide in median household income. And it's a decrease of 3.5%, which falls outside of their margin of error of 1.5%. So it suggests that there really has been a drop in that. Now, to put it in a little bit of context for you, Ryan, that runs contrary to all of the other economic indicators that we look at.
I was actually going to jump in and say that. Can we square that?
Well, it's one of those stories that answers some questions but raises others. So, and stop me if I'm getting a little too...
No, this fascinates me, because I think statistics, oftentimes, they can say many things, depending on what you want those to say. But how those statistics are arranged or presented to you can still tell an interesting story.
Now, broadly, over the last 10 years, in other words, through the recession and out of the Great Recession, the thought has been that we have replaced the jobs that we lost, and we've replaced them with higher paying jobs than
those that
we
went
had
out.
Pre-recession. Yes.
Interesting.
And we point to things like more employment in medical education, with the start of the med school.
Right, in the U District, fascinating in terms of how the massive growth in that area.
Absolutely, and those jobs are higher paying than the ones that we lost.
So fewer jobs, higher paying, but statistically speaking, the math can be skewed a bit.
Yeah, actually more jobs and higher paying. So where does this come from? Now, the income, if you think about household income, it really breaks down into 3 different categories. There's wage income, which is the one we most think of, and it accounts for 60% of all income. Actually, I'm a little surprised it's not higher than that. But,
yeah, me too.
But it's 60%. And then the others are split pretty evenly between investment income, which is, as you can imagine, a variety of things. dividends, capital gains,
Right.
all of that. And then the last category is what they call transfer payments. Now that includes Social Security. It includes it would include any sort of federal assistance,
Right.
and that sort of thing.
Fixed income type payment structures.
Typically from the government.
Yep.
Or exclusively from the government. So we know at the same time that these numbers came out on median household income, we also saw that wages had grown 3.3%. What that suggests is that the decline is in transfer payments and investment income. The why is very difficult to answer with that.
Yeah, I think we'd almost need a flow chart for that, but that is fascinating. Why
Yeah.
you have one going up, one going down. That's interesting.
Yeah. So it suggests that households that rely on transfer payments and investment income are seeing decreases in that income, and why that is needs further analysis.
Yeah, the further analysis, I think one thing that comes to mind is, isn't that subset of our population most likely retired if they are getting potentially that fixed income, Social Security, et cetera? The investment income, most likely that's our aging population. So that might require some looking into. That's interesting.
You know, there's no data to support this, but one of the theories would be that, yes, you're seeing more households relying on retirement income. You're seeing more people retire, which stands to reason. Another one that I thought of, which I have no data to back up at all, but are we seeing a difference in the composition of households themselves? In other words, are we seeing more millennials moving out?
I was just going to ask that. Is the overall influx into our community, what does the age range look like? And so we'd have to look at some statistics on
Absolutely. Absolutely.
that.
But just to back up what I was saying earlier, we look at the positive indicators. The unemployment rate is stable in Spokane County. Average annual unemployment up to this date is around 6.6%, which is right around where it was year-to-date last year, but lower than it had been if you look at the full year 2014, or 2015, excuse me.
What do you think? What do you think it would be? It might not have the answer right offhand, but what it would be in 2005. Do we know what that would look like? We were coming through the height of the real estate bubble, if you will. 2005, 6, 7, boom. 2008, obviously, we ran into some problematic economic indicators there. Do we know what the numbers look like in comparison?
Well, in terms of median household income, it would be higher because we did see some dips for a couple of years through the recession, but in general they've been increasing over a good 5 to 6 years. So it's not one of those that took 10 years to recover, like say like the total jobs number or something along those lines. Yeah, yeah. So we're headed in the right direction. We're not headed in general. We're headed in the right direction, and I think it'll be interesting to see what the 2016 numbers show.
Well, that might be a good segue into I think another important topic is there or is there not a labor shortage in our area? I mean, that ties right into those statistics. If we have a shortage,
absolutely.
Economics, macroeconomics might say, well, we should see those households maybe bump in wages if there's a demand for the employee.
Well, the labor market right now is absolutely fascinating because I myself had an interview with Nancy Nelson, who is the president of Humanix, temporary help agency. By and large, temporary help, but they also do some direct hire, some headhunting. My term, not hers. And
disclaimer that.
And she talked about a tight labor market in Spokane County, where they are actually struggling to find the right workers for clients, and even turning down new business because they'd be eating into the labor market that they have secured for their current clients.
Right.
Yeah.
And isn't that interesting? Because like most things any of us would talk about, it depends on who you're talking to. It depends on where you sit or stand at that particular moment, whether you have a job, whether you don't have a job. But that sounds like that's good news for Spokane.
To a degree, it is good news, but one of the biggest problems is a skills gap that we see in certain sectors. Now, Humanics works in a broad range of industries, but one of its specialties is manufacturing, and what they see is people who don't have the basic skills to do some of the jobs that they're looking to fill on manufacturing floors and that sort of thing.
Let's take a short break because I'd like to come back to that and drill down a bit. I find that very interesting that what is our economy made up of in terms of skilled versus the different genres of our economy, and what is Spokane looking for and what they're not looking for. We'll come right back with Linn Parish from the Business Journal. Thank you.
You're listening to SpokaneTalksOnline.com, Spokane and North Idaho's business and community talk station.
Last year alone, Avista customers saved over 53 million kilowatt hours of energy. How? By caulking their windows, programming their thermostats, replacing their incandescent light bulbs with LEDs. Simple things, really. But the energy they saved was enough to power more than 4,000 homes for an entire year. Way to save, everyone. Way to save. Find your way to save at avistautilities.com.
A special thank you to our friends at Tom Sawyer Country Coffee, the official coffee supplier here at Spokane Talks Online.
Snoring can disrupt marriages and cause serious health problems. Call Sleep Better Northwest first, the experts in dental sleep medicine. Their medically approved, custom-fit oral appliances will have both you and your partner sleeping better and being more productive throughout your day. Don't wait. Snoring and sleep apnea can signal potential strokes or heart attacks. For more information, visit needbettersleepnow.com and download our health guide today. Sleep Better Northwest, the experts in dental sleep medicine.
Sammy Eubanks. Join me daily at 3:30 for Local Motion on SpokaneTalksOnline.com. Brought to you by Spokane 7 Magazine and the Spokesman Review.
What is a credit union? It's a cooperative, like a food co-op or a housing co-op, but the members share money. Credit unions offer the same services you'll find in a bank, but they're different from banks. First, credit unions are owned by their members, and credit unions are not for profit. Any money the credit union makes goes right back to the members in the form of low fees and good rates. To learn more, you can go to STCU's blog at stcumoney.org.
Welcome back. Ryan McNeese with Business Talks, and we are here with Linn Parish, talking about what's going on in the economy in our greater Spokane area. Thanks, Linn. When we just left for the break, we were drilling down a bit on the labor force in our area. Let's chat a little bit more about that.
Sure.
In terms of what makes up our labor market, and then, of course, as that relates to the median income in our area.
Right. Well, as I referred to early on, we've seen jobs recover and job growth consistently in recent years, and to the degree where Nancy Nelson of Humanics really describes it as a tight labor market right now, and talked a lot about the need to really continue initiatives on workforce development and closing the skills gap that we see in our market right now.
I think Nancy would be a great person, a great perspective in that regard, because they see so many diverse types of employment coming
Absolutely.
through their respective business. That's interesting.
Yeah, she does. And the gaps are, we talked a little bit about manufacturing earlier, but they're really not exclusive to that. And one of the factors that we see there is not just people coming up and not being prepared to enter the workforce, but that coupled with retirements in a lot of industries and people with decades of experience leaving jobs that there really aren't the volume of workers to replace.
Isn't that interesting, though?
Yeah.
And I'd imagine you end up having several conversations with the respective chambers of commerce. Are there plans in place to work on those particular challenges?
Yeah, there are industry-specific plans, and there also are broad efforts along workforce development. It's not a new issue per se, but it's one that appears to be more amplified than it once was.
And I think the ones you seem to hear quite a bit about that get a lot of press are obviously the healthcare industry here in Spokane, the university district and what's going on there, very positive things. But it sounds like what you're indicating, there are several. There's a multifaceted plan in place by these respective organizations.
Absolutely, and one industry where you see you've heard them ringing the alarm bells for quite some time, and they're continuing to work on developing new people is construction. You see that a lot in there. Can I mention one other thing that Nancy and I talked about,
Please.
though, that throws an interesting wrinkle into this? Since the passage of Initiative 502, which legalized marijuana, they have seen an increased issue of prospective workers not being able to pass drug tests. So
those are fascinating questions. Obviously, from a legal background, the federal employment issues with the state employment laws is such a nexus that actually Kent has spoken on his Spokane Talks live show quite a bit. We could go on and on about that. Fascinating.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is as you know, Ryan, terms of employment can say lots of different things, and people presume that because marijuana is legal, that they can smoke it and it won't have their effect on them on the job search, and that's a false assumption.
That is absolutely a false assumption.
Yeah.
But not a crazy thought.
No.
An individual working in the as an example, in the construction trade, and sees that obviously this is a legal endeavor in the state of Washington. However, as you're indicating, as they cross over into that job search and application process, an employer in the state of Washington is perfectly at their discretion to say, we are not going to allow you to be under the influence. And the current testing of the marijuana drug is so much different than the alcohol issue. Whereas in alcohol, you obviously can take a test, and if you've had a couple drinks on a Sunday, you are not going to be showing up on a test on a Monday. Not true with marijuana. It could be a week, it could be 2 weeks. And so, yes, those are big issues. You're seeing employers say, hey, it's our right per federal law to say we're not going to allow this.
Right. And technically, please correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that an employer could say no alcohol. They could say no nicotine, no tattoos, right?
Absolutely.
And so this falls into that same category. So while the drug is legal, it still can prevent you from obtaining employment.
Yep.
And on the other side of that, though, I have talked, and this is anecdotal, with some employers in construction fields largely who say, hey, if I tried to test, I wouldn't have any employees. And
that is an interesting comment that is kind of circling back to what you've mentioned at the beginning of the show, that your applicant pool for respective types of trades, whether it be construction, whether it be healthcare, et cetera. But it sounds like you're talking to a lot of folks that say that pool might be grossly limited if they were overly stringent in that area.
So the big question is, which will adapt more? Will the employer relax the rules a little bit, or will the workforce get more in line with the expectations that employers have by and large?
And like anything, there are two sides to that equation. From a legal standpoint, if you're overly lax on that drug policy, obviously there could be some negligence issues depending on what those workers, what areas of construction and or any field those individuals are working in. So I'm sure, as you're indicating, those employers have a lot of tough decisions to make, because there's what is the law, that sometimes is easier said than done, but what's the law, and then what's the practicality of how this works in the real world?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Interesting. I think you'd mentioned earlier that there's been a number of planned apartment complexes also that are on the horizon, and I'm sure at the Business Journal that's something that comes across your desk. What's going on there?
Well, Mike McLean, one of our reporters, did some, not investigating, but did some reporting on this subject recently, and what he tallied was 850 new units that are either planned or currently under construction in the Spokane area. And that does include a little bit of North Idaho, a little bit of Kootenai County as well. And a total of $120 million in new construction that, once again, planned or underway right now.
Yeah, again, I'm sure there's two sides to this, but that seems like good news. That seems like the economy is driving individuals for one reason or another to our area. I think what fascinates me is, what are those reasons? And
Sure.
what are, again, per this conversation we're having, what are the reasons those folks are coming to our community? What are their economic needs? What are their job prospects? Obviously, what are their housing needs? And clearly, that indicates that there is quite a bit of a housing need.
Sure. And the newest vacancy rates that we have for rentals in Spokane County is 1.3%, which is insanely tight. 5% is considered a healthy market.
Yeah.
And so really it's a simple case of building up now to meet demand. Now, the interesting thing is I don't ever remember hearing of a constricted rental market in Spokane. So it's interesting to see the numbers so tight and this explosion of activity.
Well, and Lynn, you and I are roughly the same age, and I too. It's interesting. There's some interesting trajectories that we're seeing in our economy right now, and so it would be interesting to kind of flesh out some of those statistics, even to the extent I think I've always been interested to know. Is the heavy need for apartment complex, are these folks by and large, or a certain percentage, are they leaving homes? Mm-hmm. Thus, obviously, looking at if you went over and looked at the stats with a real estate agent, how many homes are for sale? Or are they leaving those homes to go to these new apartments? And now, obviously, we have a large vacancy in the homes up and down the streets.
Right. And this would be a more concerning trend if you were seeing declines in home sales or declines in home prices. But both of those are still increasing at this time in Spokane County.
Okay.
So
See,
I think
perfect information there.
I think it is, and the interesting thing about the apartment market is it's not just one part of town or one market niche that they're looking for. You see an increase in low-income, market rate, and luxury apartments right now, and it's Airway Heights, downtown, South Hill, Northside Valley.
Well, I appreciate you filling in that blank for me and for our listeners, that both are rising. Apartment necessity for apartment complexes, as well as homes, residences, single-family residences. That is interesting. And I think you had some more information on potential on median income as well.
Right. So one of the interesting facets of this is breaking it down by municipality. So, and we've seen some interesting trends that beg more questions. The median income in Spokane, the city of Spokane, has increased each of the last 2 years. This last year it was 1.5%, which isn't statistically significant, but it is an increase. And in the city of Spokane Valley, it has decreased for 3 years in a row. This last year it was a 5.4% decrease in median household income.
You're right. These, as usual, statistics beg more questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but it's not just a year's worth of data. It shows clear trends with income going up in the city of Spokane and going down in the city of Spokane Valley. This year, for the first time, the median income in Spokane was actually higher than in Spokane Valley. For the past decade or so, it's been the opposite.
That Spokane Valley has been higher than
That's
the
right.
city of Spokane. Do we think that Obviously, statistical averages, again, they can tell us many things. Do you think that's pulling quite a bit from potentially Liberty Lake areas, heart of Spokane Valley? Hard to say, probably.
It is hard to say. And one of the things, if you ever talk to Mayor Condon, the city's mayor, about median income, he describes Spokane as a donut city, where if you were
That's an interesting one.
where if you were to color code median income by zip code, right? You would see the lower incomes in the middle and a ring of darker colors.
It's a good analogy.
It is. And
I thought it was just a plug for Krispy Kreme's or Mike's Donuts, but, but it actually is a good analogy.
Yeah, Mike's Donuts would be pretty good right about now.
I agree. Yeah. But I guess back on topic.
And the same is true for Spokane Valley and the county as a whole, where those lower incomes are in the middle. Now, that doesn't answer the question as to why it would be trending higher in the city as opposed to the city of Spokane Valley, but it does. You do wonder if you're seeing some improvements in that. That hole getting smaller, I guess, is what I wonder.
I really like that analogy, and I actually think I'm going to find myself this week thinking through that and talking to some folks about that, because I'm wondering in other cities in our area, maybe comparable cities, obviously larger cities like a Portland or Seattle, I wonder if that quote-unquote donut concept might be true there too. However, I would imagine you take a city like Portland, there's so much downtown living and high-end condo living, urban living, that might not be true. I think you piqued my curiosity there.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see that. I think it would be true possibly to a degree, and maybe not to the same.
Yeah, to what extent?
Yeah, extreme that it's true in Spokane County.
Well, Linn, I think we could go on and on, because I could talk business with you and statistics and what those stats say. But maybe you'll come back and chat with us again. Would you do that?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Then we'd have more and more time to chat through these and see where it leads. Thanks, Linn, for being here. Appreciate
thanks.
it.
My pleasure.
Business Talks is produced in Spokane, Washington by SpokaneTalksOnline.com, which is solely responsible for its content. Ask a question, recommend a guest, and hear this program again online anytime at SpokaneTalksOnline.com. Business Talks is brought to you by our friends at STCU. Business Talks wishes you good business and a good day.
In study after study, money is often cited as one of the top conflict points in a marriage. Finances can be an emotional topic for couples, especially when money is tight. So it pays to get in the habit of discussing it on a regular basis, even if you keep separate finances. At stcumoney.org, find 6 tips for making the conversation easier. Conversation easier.